We're going to be reading an article called Antarctic Ice. But beforehand, we want to go through the vocabulary and learn some of these words that we're going to come across so that we'll recognize them and understand them as we read. First, here's a little text that has some of the vocabulary in it. And I'll read through and we'll see if we can use context clues to figure out what these words mean. Here are some of the words: absence, shelters, permanently, drifts, scarce, dim. It looks like this would be pronounced scarce, but it's actually pronounced scarce. So let's see if we can make sense of these words. Field trip to Antarctica. Imagine if we were going on a field trip to the coldest place on Earth. Ooh. Antarctica is always cold, really cold. The absence of the sun makes it extra hard to stay there through the dark, cold winter. Now here's our first vocabulary word: absence. And we're talking about the sun, which makes our planet light so that we can see. But it says dark, through the dark. Absence actually means to not have something, or for something to not be there. So the absence of the sun would be the sun not being around, and that's why it's dark. Even so, scientists spend months in Antarctica to do research. The McMurdo station shelters them from the worst of the cold. The scientists do not stay at the station permanently. When summer comes, they set out to a field camp near the ocean to do more research. It looks like these are some images of these would be dormitories, maybe, like where the people live. Looks like there's a mountain in the distance, and maybe this is a research facility. To do ocean research, the scientists must drill or blast holes in the ice. They put on special suits and dive into the cold water. They photograph amazing things, such as a sea spider as it drifts past. And here's a caption under this image: scientists use special cameras to film deep sea creatures in the dim light. Dim means that there's very little. The scientists collect samples of many sea creatures. Information about these animals and the chemicals they use to protect themselves is scarce. Later, the scientists will study whether the chemicals can be used in medicines. There weren't a lot of context clues to figure out what these words mean. Let's go through the slideshow and learn what the words mean. Here's our first word: conserved. If something is rare or important, you protect it. When you are careful not to use something up completely, it is conserved. It means even to save it, to conserve it, to protect it. Here's a little cartoon of Garfield conserving energy. Take a nap. Shelters. When something protects you and it keeps you safe, it shelters you to protect you. So, and here's some shelters in Antarctica. And here's a funny looking shelter. It looks actually like an oven, but it's just a toaster oven. It's just like a bus stop. But it protects you from the rain and even from the wind too. Shelters. Harsh. If something is hard to stand up to, like a blizzard, it is harsh. There's even like harsh treatment would be like mean treatment, or something that like is hard to take. Oh, look at these guys. These guys are going up a harsh terrain. Bleak. If something is cold and gloomy, might be considered bleak. This is a bleak looking landscape. It's gloomy looking. Bleak. Permanently. If something stays one way forever, it stays that way permanently. Permanent markers are when the ink you're not able to wash it off. The ink would stay there permanently. Ideally, if you had the opportunity, would you like to move permanently to another country, or would you prefer to continue living in this country? And I assume that's asked of Americans. Interesting looking data. Which of these is more permanent? The sandcastle or Mount Rushmore? It's kind of obvious. Absence. This beautiful image. When someone who is normally present is missing, we experience his or her absence. They would be marked absent if they're not here. Oh, look at this image. Oops. This would be the absence of color, right? It's also, this looks like maybe a computer lab, and it's very important to not have any dust in there or organic matter. Absence of furniture, absence of life, absence of dirt. Strict. If you are stern and demand obedience, you are strict. You know, that guy looks really strict. A teacher in a one-room schoolhouse might be strict. Drifts. When something moves along without direction, it drifts. Just the current takes it, the wind might move it, a breeze could move it along. Here's an iceberg drifting along. Dim. That's really hard to see that word, isn't it? Well, guess what? When there is not much light, it is dim. It might be hard to see. Dim. Ooh, look at that. Dim. Scarce. Look at that guy sliding along in his belly. If there is not much of something to be found, it is scarce. And that's it. Those are our vocabulary words for this story, Antarctic Ice. You'll have instructions in the Google Classroom assignment as to what to do with these words, but you should study them, look through the slideshow a few times, and make sure you understand the words and their meanings.